Before the United States became a superpower, it was just 13 rebellious colonies clinging to the Atlantic coast. In 1776, those colonies declared independence from the British Empire and fought a brutal revolution to gain it. The war lasted 8 bloody years and ended with the Treaty of Paris in 1783, where Britain formally recognized American independence. The new nation's territory stretched from the Atlantic Ocean to the Mississippi River, and from Canada down to Spanish Florida. But this was just the beginning of America's hunger for land. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson made the deal of the century with France. It was called the Louisiana Purchase, and it doubled the size of the country overnight. For $15 million, the United States bought over 800,000 square miles of land from Napoleon, who needed cash for war. The Louisiana Territory stretched from the Mississippi River to the Rocky Mountains and from the Gulf of Mexico to Canada. To explore this vast new land, Jefferson sent Meriwether Lewis and William Clark on a legendary expedition. They journeyed thousands of miles through uncharted territory, meeting native tribes, battling the wilderness, and reaching the Pacific Ocean. Meanwhile, American settlers were pushing westward, and tensions with native peoples exploded into a series of brutal conflicts. In 1819, the United States turned its eyes south and struck a deal with Spain known as the Adams-Onis Treaty. Under this treaty, Spain handed over Florida to the United States in exchange for settling a boundary dispute in the southwest. The land grabs continued, but the next conquest would come through war. In 1836, Texas declared independence from Mexico after a bloody revolt that included the legendary Battle of the Alamo. For nearly a decade, Texas was its own country, the Republic of Texas, until it was annexed by the United States in 1845. This led to war with Mexico, and it would become one of the most significant land acquisitions in American history. The Mexican-American War began in 1846 and lasted until 1848, ending with the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. Mexico was forced to surrender nearly half of its territory, including what is now California, Nevada, Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming. In a single treaty, the United States expanded its reach all the way to the Pacific Ocean. But America wasn't done yet. In 1853, the Gadsden Purchase added a small but critical strip of land in southern Arizona and New Mexico. It was purchased to make way for a southern transcontinental railroad and to clean up the border after the Mexican War. As settlers surged west, conflict with Native American tribes erupted into decades of warfare. Entire nations were pushed off their lands, forced onto reservations, or destroyed in battle. The idea of manifest destiny took hold, a belief that Americans were destined to control the continent from coast to coast. In 1867, the United States made another bold move by purchasing Alaska from Russia for $7 million. People laughed and called it Seward's folly, but they stopped laughing when gold and oil were discovered. Alaska would become a vital piece of the American puzzle, rich in natural resources and military power. After the Civil War, the push west accelerated with railroads, homesteading, and the destruction of the bison herds. The last major land acquisition came in 1898, when the United States annexed Hawaii. What started as a peaceful kingdom was overthrown by American sugar planters backed by U.S. Marines. Hawaii's strategic location in the Pacific made it essential for America's growing naval power. By 1900, the United States had transformed from a small group of colonies into a continental empire. From the icy shores of Alaska to the beaches of Florida, from the deserts of the Southwest to the Hawaiian Islands, the land was vast and diverse. But every acre of that land came with a price. Some was bought in secret, some was seized in war, and some was taken through force and deception. The expansion brought freedom for some and destruction for others. It reshaped the world map, toppled nations, and built a global power. This is how the United States got its land. And every inch of it tells a story. Like if you enjoyed it. Subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel. Beneath our feet, the earth is restless. Volcanoes are its pressure valves, powerful, unpredictable, and ancient. They are born from the chaos deep within the mantle. Driven by tectonic forces, their fury reshapes the world. Volcanoes are not just mountains, they are wounds in Earth's crust where fire escapes. The Pacific Ring of Fire circles the ocean with seething energy. It holds over 70% of the planet's active volcanoes. This ring stretches across Japan, Indonesia, the Americas, and Oceania. It is a chain of destruction and creation. In 1815, Mount Tambora in Indonesia erupted with unimaginable force. It was the most powerful volcanic eruption in recorded history. Ash and gas were hurled into the atmosphere. Over 70,000 people died, and the world plunged into a year without summer. Crops failed, famine spread, and snow fell in June across parts of North America. The sun turned red through a smoky sky. In the year of our Lord 79, Mount Vesuvius buried Pompeii and Herculaneum under volcanic ash. Thousands of lives were erased in a single day. People were frozen in their final moments. Their bodies became casts of stone beneath layers of ash and sorrow. Iceland sits on the mid-Atlantic ridge where continents pull apart. Its volcanoes are raw forces of nature and symbols of national identity. In 2010, Eyjafjallajökull erupted and grounded flights across Europe. Tiny particles of ash drifted through jet engines and threatened disaster. Hawaii rose from the sea because of a volcanic hotspot. The islands were built layer by lava and time. As the Pacific Plate drifts northwest, the hotspot continues to create new islands. From Kauai to the Big Island, each landmass is a living fossil. Kilauea is one of Earth's most active volcanoes. Its lava flows have engulfed homes, highways, and forests. Some eruptions do not just destroy, they threaten civilization itself. Supervolcanoes are rare but cataclysmic. Some volcanoes do not just threaten a region, they threaten the entire planet. Yellowstone is one of Earth's most dangerous supervolcanoes. It sleeps beneath a national park visited by millions every year. Its caldera stretches across 45 miles. Beneath it lies a magma chamber large enough to fill the Grand Canyon multiple times. It last erupted over 640,000 years ago. Before that, it erupted 1.3 million years ago and 2.1 million years ago. That pattern suggests it could erupt roughly every 600,000 to 700,000 years. Some believe it is overdue. If Yellowstone erupts again, it will not look like a fiery explosion. It will begin with earthquakes, ground swelling, and venting gases. Then, without warning, the sky will darken. Ash would fall across North America, choking crops and shutting down power grids. The eruption could eject over 2,000 times more material than Mount St. Helens. It would cool the planet, disrupt weather patterns, and collapse global food supply chains. Cities across the Midwest could become uninhabitable. The world as we know it would be forever changed. It has not happened in human memory, but the evidence lies beneath our feet. Scientists monitor Yellowstone constantly, but if it erupts, we may only have days or hours to react. The question is not if, but when. Lake Toba in Indonesia erupted 74,000 years ago. It was so powerful that it almost wiped out humanity. Some scientists believe only a few thousand humans survived. The ash cloud darkened the planet and changed the climate for years. Toba left behind a vast caldera filled with water. The peaceful lake hides a violent past. Not all volcanoes roar on land. Deep beneath the oceans, volcanoes build new crust along the sea floor. Hydrothermal vents called black smokers release mineral-rich water. Strange life forms thrive there in complete darkness. These underwater volcanoes might be where life began. The heat and chemistry could have sparked biology in the deep. Around 1600 before Christ, the island of Santorini exploded. The Minoan civilization collapsed, and waves swept across the Mediterranean. Some say this eruption inspired the legend of Atlantis, a paradise lost to fire and water. In Central America, volcanoes tower over fertile farmland. The ash creates rich soil that feeds millions. But beauty hides danger. In 1985, Nevado del Ruiz erupted in Colombia. Melting glaciers triggered a lahar, a deadly river of mud and ash. Over 20,000 people died in the town of Armero. The warning signs were there. Few listened and many paid the price. Mount Fuji in Japan is a national symbol and a sleeping giant. Its last major eruption was in 1707. Ash blanketed the city of Edo, now called Tokyo. More than 3 centuries have passed, but the volcano remains active. In 1991, Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines exploded. The eruption dropped global temperatures by half a degree. Sulfur dioxide reached the stratosphere and reflected sunlight. It was one of the largest eruptions of the 20th century. Naples lives in the shadow of Vesuvius. Millions of people live within reach of its next eruption. Scientists use seismographs, gas sensors, and satellite data to monitor volcanoes. Yet, even with modern tools, prediction is not easy. Iceland may someday split apart along its volcanic rift. New land is rising as tectonic plates drift slowly. Not all eruptions explode. Hawaiian volcanoes often flow with slow rivers of lava. But some unleash pyroclastic surges. These clouds move faster than hurricanes and obliterate everything in their path. Pompeii was consumed by one of these surges. Entire families perished where they stood. Despite the risks, volcanoes give back. Their ash enriches soil, and their heat powers geothermal energy. In 2021, a new island emerged near Japan. Born from fire, it reshaped the sea overnight. Volcanoes are not unique to Earth. Jupiter's moon Io erupts constantly with molten rock. Mars hosts Olympus Mons, the tallest volcano in the solar system. It stands nearly 3 times the height of Mount Everest. On Venus, volcanoes may still be active beneath the planet's dense atmosphere. Across the cosmos, fire shapes planets. Volcanoes created our continents. They birthed the land beneath our cities. Without them, Earth would be a lifeless water world. They built the stage for evolution. The oxygen we breathe, the soil that feeds us, the islands we love, all owe their existence to volcanoes. Volcanoes are creators as much as destroyers. Their fury shapes the earth, and their silence hides deep power. They do not follow our rules or calendars. They answer to the pulse of the planet. So when you see a smoking crater or feel the earth tremble, remember this: you are standing on the edge of something ancient and alive. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story of Earth's volcanic soul with someone who needs to remember how powerful our planet truly is.
A day in the life of Audie Murphy, January 26, 1945. He's 20 years old. Wounded, exhausted, freezing. He orders his men to fall back, then climbs onto a burning tank destroyer, alone. Enemy soldiers flood the field. 200 of them, maybe more. Machine gun in hand, flames at his back. He holds the line for over an hour. Then he leads the counterattack. Still bleeding, still fighting. By nightfall, the field is silent. And Audie Murphy is a legend. Like if you enjoyed it, sub to see more. Share to let the world know about his epic life. You wake up not in a bed, but beneath a rough canopy of animal hides and woven grass, with the chill of the morning air biting through your fur cloak. The world smells like fire, smoke, earth, and the sharp scent of wet stone, and your senses are sharper because they have to be. There is no concept of hours, only the rising sun and your empty stomach. You grab a sharpened piece of flint, not for show, but survival, because today you must hunt or go hungry. The ground is cold and unforgiving, but you are used to it, and your feet are hard, your hands calloused, and your skin stained with the work of living. Language exists, but it is not made of long conversations, and it is quick gestures, guttural sounds, and looks that say more than words ever could. Your tribe is small, maybe 20 people if you're lucky, and every face is as familiar as your own hand. You know who is strong, who is clever, who you must protect, and who protects you, because survival is not a solo game. Fire is everything, and it is warmth, safety, cooking, and the boundary between man and monster. At night, the dark is complete and terrifying, and you huddle with others, not just for warmth, but because anything could be out there. The sky above is massive and unbroken, and it is filled with stars you do not name, but you know them like a map etched in your memory. Your gods are not written or carved, and they are the storm, the sun, the animal you could not kill, and the child that lived when they should have died. You hunt with spears tipped in stone, but it is not just the weapon, and it is the understanding of wind, scent, sound, and movement that makes you a predator. Your prey is fast, wary, and deadly, and one mistake, and you are the one bleeding out under the trees. You eat what you can kill or gather, and roots, berries, fish, insects, and anything with calories is sacred. There is no shame in eating bugs, liver, or raw meat, and shame has not been invented yet. You do not think in terms of nations or borders, and you move with the land, and when it no longer feeds you, you leave it behind. You know the signs of rain by the smell of the dirt, the call of birds, and the way your own skin tingles. Your clothes are stitched from hides using needles made of bone and thread made from gut. You sleep in shifts because someone always has to be awake in case something with claws finds your fire. Pain is not a mystery, and when something breaks, you deal with it, and if it kills you, that is life. If you are injured, the healer chews herbs and places them on your wound while others pray to something older than words. You do not know medicine, but you know what plants to eat when your stomach burns or when a fever grips your body. Death is not feared but expected, and when someone dies, you mourn them with silence and the passing of their tools to another hand. You might not live past 30, but every day you do live feels earned. Love is not flowers or dates, and it is sharing food, shelter, warmth, and choosing someone to face the fire and the storm with. Partnerships are formed through ritual and survival, and a glance across the fire, shared tasks, or the decision to raise a child together. Children are rare, precious, and raised by all, and every adult is a parent in some way, and every child is everyone's future. You tell stories by firelight, not to entertain, but to remember, and you speak of the hunt, the storm, the ancestor who saw the sky fall and lived. Your art is simple but powerful, and it is handprints on cave walls, carvings in stone, and the first attempts at capturing the spirit of a beast in charcoal. There are no mirrors, but you know yourself in how others look at you and how you feel after each hunt or healing. You do not dream of riches, fame, or status, and you dream of a hunt that ends well and a night without fear. Conflict happens, but wars as we know them do not, and you fight for food, territory, or vengeance, and then it is done. There is no written history, but the elders carry knowledge in their bones, and their voice is law. You learn by doing, and every lesson is carved into your hands, feet, and scars. Your language evolves slowly, and it is built on need, rhythm, sound, and shared memory, and it is alive in every breath of the tribe. You live in tune with the earth because there is no other way, and every animal, every tree, and every river means life or death. You have never seen a city, a road, or a wheel, but you know how to read the clouds, track a deer for 2 days, and find shelter in a storm. Your world is dangerous, raw, and merciless, but it is also pure, immediate, and deeply connected. To be born 100,000 years ago is to live with no distractions and only the moment, the tribe, the land, and the fight to see another sunrise. If you survive long enough to become old, your story will be told by the fire, so those who come after know what it took to make them possible. Like, subscribe, and share if you made it through the Stone Age. Full documentaries and wild history await you on the channel. This is Knowing Things is Power. Carthage rose from the sea like a jewel, founded by Phoenician settlers from Tyre around 814 years before Christ. Its harbors shimmered with bronze sails and cargoes from every corner of the Mediterranean. The city was a marvel of engineering, protected by 23 miles of walls and a circular harbor that could hide hundreds of warships. At its center stood a military dockyard accessible only through a secret channel. Commerce fueled its power, trading silver, gold, ivory, glass, and purple dye across Africa, Iberia, and the Levant. It was a maritime empire born not from conquest, but cunning and control of the sea. Carthage's ruling elite formed a merchant oligarchy, with councils and judges rather than kings. Its Senate of elders made decisions behind closed doors, where wealth spoke louder than war cries. Its religion was mysterious and ancient, devoted to Baal Hammon and the goddess Tanit. Rituals of fire and sacrifice were offered in great temples and tofits, hidden from foreign eyes. Naval strength defined Carthage, with fast triremes manned by mercenaries and seafarers from Numidia, Iberia, and beyond. Its fleet was the most advanced in the ancient world, guarded like sacred treasure. Rome, once a minor rival across the sea, watched Carthage grow with unease. In 264, the First Punic War erupted over control of Sicily, sparking one of history's longest and bloodiest conflicts. Carthage dominated at sea, but underestimated Roman resilience. Rome built an entire navy from scratch, training crews on land before daring to face the Punic fleet. They introduced the corvus, a boarding bridge that transformed sea battles into infantry brawls. This innovation turned the tide, and Rome claimed Sicily after 23 years of brutal fighting. Carthage paid dearly, both in silver and lost prestige. Its western provinces rebelled, and mercenary armies once loyal turned on their masters in the chaos that followed. But the Barcid family rose to reclaim Carthage's strength, pushing into Iberia to establish a new empire. General Hamilcar Barca laid the foundations, but his son Hannibal would make history tremble. In 218, Hannibal crossed the Alps with 90,000 troops, 12,000 cavalry, and 37 war elephants. He lost half his men in snow and battle, but emerged into Italy like a storm from the mountains. He crushed Rome's armies at Trebia and Lake Trasimene using terrain and deception. At Cannae, he executed a double envelopment, surrounding and destroying a Roman force twice his size. 70,000 Romans died in one day, including senators and consuls. Rome was paralyzed with fear, yet Hannibal did not march on the city itself. Carthage withheld reinforcements, hoping Hannibal's presence alone would win the war. Instead, Rome adopted Fabian tactics, avoiding battle and wearing Hannibal down through attrition. Rome struck back by invading Iberia, defeating Hannibal's brothers and seizing the silver-rich territories. The young Scipio Africanus emerged as a brilliant strategist, admired even by his enemies. In 204, Scipio invaded Africa, forcing Carthage to recall Hannibal after 16 years abroad. The two legends met at the Battle of Zama in 202, where Roman discipline and tactics broke the Punic line. Carthage surrendered, stripped of its fleet, empire, and independence in foreign policy. It survived as a weakened state, still wealthy, but now under Rome's shadow. Yet Carthage thrived in trade, quickly rebuilding its economy and influence. This frightened Roman senators who believed Carthage could rise again if left unchecked. Cato the Elder ended every speech with Carthago delenda est, Carthage must be destroyed. Rome waited for a reason, and in 149 it found one in a dispute with a nearby African tribe. The Third Punic War began with impossible demands. Rome ordered Carthage to disarm completely and abandon its city to rebuild inland. The Carthaginians chose death over exile. They armed every citizen, melted gold for weapons, and built catapults from burned wood. The siege lasted 3 years, during which starvation, disease, and slaughter claimed tens of thousands. Carthage fought block by block, floor by floor, in what became an apocalyptic end. Roman legions finally broke through the walls in 146. They burned the city for 17 days and enslaved the survivors. The temples were looted, the libraries lost, and the culture buried beneath ash. Rome claimed to have salted the earth, ensuring no city would rise there again. Over 7 centuries of power were erased in a single act of annihilation. Carthage, once the rival of empires, became dust beneath Roman boots. But the memory endured. Hannibal's tactics became military doctrine, studied by generals from Napoleon to Eisenhower. Roman historians who celebrated Carthage's fall also preserved its greatness. They could not erase what had burned so brightly. The ruins of Carthage remain in modern Tunisia, overlooking the sea where its fleet once ruled. Columns rise from the dust, silent but unbroken. Carthage fell not from weakness, but from strength that threatened a rising empire. It was destroyed not for what it had done, but for what it could do again. Legends are not buried with stones. They live in fear, in fire, in names whispered across time. Carthage was not a city. It was a force of will. Dig deep enough and you will still hear it breathe. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to see future videos. Share if you would like to support the channel. Your body is home to trillions of bacteria. In fact, they outnumber your human cells. This invisible army is called the microbiome. It lives in your gut, on your skin, and even in your lungs. Without them, you wouldn't survive. They help digest food, protect against disease, and even produce vitamins. From the moment you're born, bacteria start moving in. Some come from your mother, others from the world around you. As you grow, your microbiome becomes uniquely yours. Like a bacterial fingerprint shaped by where you live and what you eat. In your gut alone, there are more bacterial cells than stars in the galaxy, each one playing a role in your daily health. These microbes talk to your brain. Through the gut-brain axis, they can influence mood, memory, and even decisions. Some scientists call your gut the second brain, because these bacteria produce neurotransmitters like serotonin and dopamine. That means your happiness may start in your intestines. Feeling anxious? It might be your microbes sending signals. Antibiotics, while life-saving, can wipe out good bacteria. A single dose can set your microbiome back for weeks. Processed foods and sugar can harm your gut flora. Fiber, fermented foods, and diversity in diet feed the good bacteria. Stress can also weaken your microbial defenses. Sleep, meditation, and healthy routines keep them thriving. There's even research suggesting your microbiome affects weight. Some people gain more from the same meal just because of their bacteria. In fact, lean and obese individuals have very different microbiomes. And fecal transplants have shown promising results in changing metabolism. Your skin has its own microbial community. These bacteria protect against infections and balance your skin's health. Every handshake, kiss, or shared space exchanges bacteria. We are constantly blending ecosystems with those around us. Your pets influence your microbiome too. People with dogs tend to have more diverse gut bacteria. Even the air you breathe carries microbes. Cities, forests, oceans, each environment shares its own bacterial signature. Modern hygiene has its costs. While it prevents disease, it also reduces exposure to helpful microbes. Rural kids tend to have stronger immune systems than urban ones. Early exposure to a wide range of bacteria may prevent allergies and autoimmune issues. Farming communities have lower rates of asthma, all thanks to dirt and animal microbes training their immune systems. Scientists are exploring ways to restore microbiome balance. Probiotics, prebiotics, and even customized bacterial therapies are in development. In the future, we may treat depression or obesity with bacteria. Imagine a pharmacy of microscopic allies tailored just for you. Your body is not just yours. It's a vast ecosystem, a living planet of bacterial life. You are more bacteria than human. But maybe that's not a bad thing at all. Like, subscribe, and share if you're ready to embrace your inner microbes. Alexander was born in the year 356, before the Common Era, in the city of Pella, Macedonia, into a world of blood and ambition. His father, King Philip II, was a ruthless strategist who dreamed of conquering Greece. His mother, Olympias, was fierce and deeply religious. She told her son he was descended from Achilles and fathered by Zeus. As a child, Alexander tamed a wild horse named Bucephalus, the only one brave enough to ride it. His father said, "Macedonia is too small for you." At 13, he was sent to study under Aristotle. He absorbed knowledge of philosophy, warfare, medicine, and the epic tales of Homer. Alexander slept with a copy of the Iliad under his pillow. Achilles became his role model, a warrior who sought glory above all. By 16, Alexander was left to rule Macedonia as regent while Philip campaigned elsewhere. He crushed a Thracian revolt and founded a city in his name. At 18, he fought beside his father at the Battle of Chaeronea. He led the left wing and shattered the sacred band of Thebes. In 336 BC, Philip was assassinated at a royal wedding. Alexander seized the throne immediately, eliminating rivals before they could act. The Greek city-states saw an opportunity to break free. Alexander marched south and razed Thebes to the ground, killing thousands and enslaving the rest. With Greece secured, he declared war on Persia. It was a bold move. The Persians had the largest empire on earth. In 334 BC, he crossed the Hellespont into Asia. He visited the supposed site of Troy and paid tribute to Achilles at his tomb. At the Battle of the Granicus River, he led a charge across the water against Persian forces. His men urged caution, but he wanted victory through boldness. The Persians fell back in chaos, and Alexander claimed his first major victory. He spared captured Greek mercenaries, but executed their Persian officers. He moved through Asia Minor, liberating Greek cities and gaining allies. His army grew stronger with every town he took. At Gordium, he faced the legendary Gordian knot. Rather than solve it, he cut it in half with his sword, fulfilling the prophecy in his own way. Meanwhile, Darius III prepared a massive army to crush him. The two armies met near Issus, where the terrain favored Alexander's smaller force. Alexander's cavalry slammed into the Persian center. Darius fled the battlefield, leaving his mother, wife, and children behind. Instead of abusing his victory, Alexander treated the captured women with honor. Word spread that this young king was unlike any other. He turned south toward Egypt, conquering coastal cities along the way. Tyre resisted, so Alexander built a causeway to reach it. The siege of Tyre lasted 7 months. When the city finally fell, he slaughtered 8,000 men and sold 30,000 into slavery. Arriving in Egypt, he was welcomed as a liberator. He founded the city of Alexandria, destined to become a center of learning and trade. At the Oracle of Siwa, deep in the desert, priests declared him the son of Zeus Ammon. The prophecy confirmed his divine right to rule. Alexander still had much more to accomplish. He marched to meet Darius again, this time at Gaugamela. The Persians outnumbered him 5-1. With brilliant tactics, he broke through the Persian lines and went straight for Darius. Once again, the Persian king fled. Alexander marched into Babylon and was crowned King of Kings. The treasures of the empire were his. He moved through Susa and into Persepolis, the ceremonial capital. There, in a drunken frenzy, he set the palace ablaze. Some said it was revenge for Persia's burning of Athens a century earlier. Others said it was madness. Alexander now ruled the largest empire in history, but he wasn't finished. He wanted to push east, to the edges of the known world. In Bactria, he fought brutal guerrilla campaigns in freezing mountains. He took a local wife, Roxana, to help secure his hold. But trouble brewed among his men. They were weary, cold, and homesick, and didn't like seeing Alexander adopt Persian customs. He began dressing like a Persian king and demanded to be worshipped as a god. Many saw this as betrayal. Some plotted against him. His closest friend Clytus criticized him drunkenly, and Alexander killed him in rage. Haunted by the murder, Alexander fell into deep despair. He isolated himself more and more. He marched into India, facing King Porus and his war elephants at the Battle of the Hydaspes. It was one of his bloodiest battles. The river swelled from heavy rains, and the elephants caused chaos. But Alexander's tactics won the day. Porus was captured, but impressed him so much that Alexander let him keep his kingdom. It was a rare moment of respect. His men, exhausted and fearful, refused to go any farther east. After 8 years of campaigning, they demanded to return home. Alexander reluctantly agreed. The journey back through the Gedrosian desert was catastrophic. Heat and thirst killed thousands. His army limped back to Babylon, broken but victorious. Alexander began planning new conquests: Arabia, North Africa, even Rome. He dreamed of a single world empire. Like most of us in our short lives, he did not get to finish all he set out for. He fell ill after a banquet. 10 days later, he was dead. He was only 32. The cause of death remains one of history's great mysteries. He left no legitimate heir. His generals, the Diadochi, divided his empire and descended into war. Yet his legacy endured. Over 20 cities bore his name, the greatest of them Alexandria. Greek became the language of science, philosophy, and trade from Egypt to India. This era became known as the Hellenistic Age. In some places he was remembered as a god, in others a tyrant. But in every corner of the known world, people remembered his name, Alexander the Great. He conquered more than just land. He conquered time. Hit that like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel. Thank you for stopping by. Knowing things is power. In the year 1726, 2 noblemen stood face to face at dawn, pistols in hand. They weren't fighting over politics or power. They were dueling over a dessert. A pie so luxurious, so rare, and so personal that one man was willing to die for it. This is the story of a fatal recipe. A tale of stolen pride, almonds, and blood on the cobblestones. The man who started it all was Lord Algernon Blackstone, a lover of French cuisine and rumored to be obsessed with perfecting a single dish. An almond tart with a honey glaze scented with citrus and rose. He served it at a private dinner for a royal envoy. And the pie was the star of the night. But among the guests was Sir Geoffrey Hale, a rival noble known for his own culinary ambitions. Days later, The exact same pie appeared at a banquet thrown by Sir Geoffrey. Same crust, same fragrance, same garnished almonds, arranged in a perfect spiral. Lord Algernon was enraged. He accused Geoffrey publicly of stealing the recipe. Tempers flared, insults flew, and the only proper course of action for gentlemen of the time was a duel. At sunrise, they met in Hyde Park. Witnesses say Algernon fired first and missed. Geoffrey's shot struck true. Algernon fell. Geoffrey lived, and the pie lived on with him. Now, centuries later, we can bring it back. Let's make the almond pie that sparked a noble feud. Start with one pie crust, either puff pastry or buttery short crust. In a bowl, combine 1 cup of almond flour, half a cup of sugar, and half a cup of softened butter. Blend until creamy. Add 2 eggs, the zest of 1 lemon, and a teaspoon of rose water. If you want a deeper flavor, add a pinch of clove or cinnamon. Mix it all until smooth and fragrant. Pour the filling into your pie crust and spread it evenly. Bake at 350 degrees Fahrenheit or 175 Celsius for about 30 to 35 minutes until golden on top. Let it cool, and if you're feeling fancy dust with a little powdered sugar, take a bite and you'll taste why this dish was worth fighting for. It's soft but rich, floral and nutty with a light citrus lift. You get the sense that this was more than dessert. It was status, it was skill. It was pride on a plate. The pie didn't just end a life, it created a legacy. And now you've brought that taste of history back to life. If you enjoyed this story and want to taste more of the past, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and share this with someone who'd duel over dessert. This is Tasting History, where every bite tells a story.
China's story begins over 5,000 years ago along the Yellow River. The Xia, Shang, and Zhou dynasties laid the roots of civilization with bronze tools, ancestor worship, and written characters. They believed rulers held a divine right called the Mandate of Heaven. It could be revoked through corruption or failure. The Zhou dynasty saw the birth of Confucianism and Taoism. These philosophies still influence Chinese society today. The Qin dynasty rose through violence and unity. Emperor Qin Shi Huang conquered rival states, burned books, and buried scholars alive. He forced millions to build roads, canals, and the First Great Wall. His tomb still holds the silent army of terracotta warriors. The Han dynasty brought stability, expansion, and glory. Silk flowed west to Rome, paper was invented, and Confucianism became law. Yet rebellion and famine eventually ended the Han's golden age. China shattered into chaos once again. The Three Kingdoms period followed and became legendary in Chinese folklore. It was a time of endless war and heroic generals. The Tang dynasty became a cultural superpower. Poetry and cosmopolitanism thrived as China reached new heights. China's capital, Chang'an, became one of the largest and most advanced cities on Earth. Foreign traders and scholars came from across Asia and the Middle East. The Song dynasty followed with inventions like gunpowder and printing presses. They created the first government-issued paper money in history. Their navy was advanced and powerful, but political weakness invited invasion. In the 1200s, the Mongols stormed across the steppes. Genghis Khan's grandson, Kublai Khan, conquered China and founded the Yuan dynasty. Trade expanded across Asia and Europe, but Mongol rule brought heavy taxes and deep resentment. The Ming dynasty rose in rebellion and restored Chinese rule. They rebuilt the Great Wall and sent Admiral Zheng He's fleets across the oceans. His ships reached India, Arabia, and East Africa. They were larger than any European fleet at the time. Then they turned inward out of fear of foreign influence. Isolation and corruption weakened the state from within. The Qing dynasty emerged from Manchuria and conquered Beijing. They expanded China to its greatest size, including Tibet, Xinjiang, Mongolia, and Taiwan. The empire ruled over many ethnic groups. Han Chinese, Manchus, Mongols, Tibetans, and Muslims all lived under Qing control. By the 1800s, the empire stagnated. The West forced China open through war and opium. The Opium Wars with Britain shattered Chinese sovereignty. Western powers carved spheres of influence and took Hong Kong. Millions became addicted to British opium. The Chinese emperor's pleas were ignored. The Qing tried to reform but failed. The Boxer Rebellion was crushed by foreign armies. In 1911, revolution ended 2,000 years of imperial rule. The Republic of China was declared under Sun Yat-sen. But democracy collapsed into warlord chaos. Out of this storm emerged the nationalists and the communists. Japan invaded China in the 1930s. The Nanjing massacre left hundreds of thousands dead. Civilians were slaughtered and women were raped. Entire districts were destroyed. Nationalists and communists briefly united to fight Japan, but once the war ended, civil war resumed. In 1949, Mao Zedong's communists seized Beijing. Chiang Kai-shek and the nationalists fled to Taiwan. Two Chinas were born. Both claimed to be the real government. Mao launched the Great Leap Forward to modernize agriculture and industry. Instead, it caused the deadliest famine in human history. Up to 45 million people starved to death. Some villages turned to cannibalism in desperation. To tighten control, Mao unleashed the Cultural Revolution. Red Guards destroyed temples and turned children against teachers and parents. Universities closed for years. Ancient knowledge was lost or rewritten. Mao died in 1976, and Deng Xiaoping took power. He opened the economy while keeping the Communist Party in control. Factories boomed and poverty dropped. China's coastal cities became engines of growth. But political freedom never arrived. The party's grip remained firm. In 1989, students filled Tiananmen Square demanding democracy. For days, they protested peacefully beneath a statue of the goddess of democracy. Then the tanks came. Soldiers opened fire on the crowds. The true death toll is unknown. One man stood before a tank and became a symbol around the world. Inside China, the massacre is erased. Searching Tiananmen or Tank Man is blocked. China's digital firewall bans Google, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. The state monitors every post and every phone. Millions use government-run apps that track movement and conversations. Social credit scores affect travel and employment. Meanwhile, Taiwan flourished into a thriving democracy. It holds elections, issues passports, and controls its own military. China still claims Taiwan as a breakaway province. It vows to retake the island by force if necessary. In the South China Sea, China built military bases on artificial islands. It claimed almost the entire region using the 9-dash line. International courts ruled the claim invalid. China refused to back down. Its ships confront Vietnamese and Filipino vessels regularly. Tensions with the United States continue to rise. In Xinjiang, over 1 million Uyghur Muslims have been detained. Reports describe forced labor, brainwashing, and sterilization. Mosques have been demolished. Children are separated from families and sent to state-run boarding schools. The government calls it counterterrorism. Critics call it cultural genocide. Tibet remains under tight control. The Dalai Lama lives in exile and protests are brutally crushed. Religious practices are tightly monitored. Foreign journalists are rarely allowed in. In Hong Kong, protests erupted in 2019 against a new extradition law. China responded with mass arrests and national security crackdowns. Pro-democracy activists have been silenced or exiled. Newspapers have been shut down or censored. The one country, two systems promise is gone. Hong Kong's freedoms are fading fast. Despite controversy, China is rising fast. It leads in AI infrastructure and global influence. The Belt and Road Initiative builds railways, ports, and highways around the world. Some fear it traps nations in debt and dependency. At home, China faces growing pressure. Youth unemployment is rising and censorship tightens. Nationalism is high, but so is unrest. The future remains uncertain. Will China become the world's dominant superpower, or will its internal contradictions bring it down? China's past is vast and violent. Its future could reshape the entire world. Like if you learned something, subscribe to see more. Share to support the channel.
The American Civil War. A brutal conflict that shaped the soul of a nation. This is the story of how the United States of America tore itself apart, and what it took to stitch itself back together. It is a war still misunderstood, still debated, and still alive in the conscience of a country it nearly destroyed. This war was not inevitable, but it was years in the making. It was not simply North against South. It was economy against economy, future against past, and freedom against bondage. Slavery had become the spine of the Southern economy. It was embedded in every law, every institution. Millions of black men, women, and children were considered property. They had no rights, no voice, no protection. Meanwhile, the North was changing rapidly. Factories were rising. Immigrants were pouring in. Cities were growing. There were still racists in the North. But the North did not depend on slavery to survive. And more people were calling for its end. Laws tried to calm the storm. The Missouri Compromise admitted Missouri as a slave state and Maine as free. The Compromise of 1850 included the Fugitive Slave Act, angering many in the North. The Kansas-Nebraska Act opened new lands to slavery by popular vote. Bleeding Kansas erupted in violence. It became clear compromise was failing. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision declared that no black person could ever be a citizen. That decision struck like thunder. It confirmed to millions that the system was deeply corrupted. Then came John Brown, an abolitionist who believed slavery would only end through bloodshed. In 1859, he led a raid on a federal armory at Harper's Ferry. He wanted to spark a slave revolt. He failed and was executed. But in death, he became a symbol, a martyr to abolitionists, a terrorist to the South. The election of 1860 was the final fracture. Abraham Lincoln won the presidency without carrying a single Southern state. The South panicked. They believed Lincoln would abolish slavery outright. South Carolina was the first to leave the Union. 10 more states followed. In early 1861, they formed the Confederate States of America. They elected Jefferson Davis as their president, and they began seizing federal property within their borders. Then came Fort Sumter, a Union fort in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina. Confederate forces surrounded it and demanded surrender. When the Union refused, they opened fire. The American Civil War had begun. Many believed the war would last weeks. Instead, it lasted 4 years. It became a grinding, bitter, and costly struggle. At the First Battle of Bull Run, Union troops panicked and fled. It was a wake-up call. The South would not be easily defeated. At Antietam, over 23,000 men were killed, wounded, or missing in a single day. It remains the bloodiest day in American history. The dead lay in rows, unburied, untouched. The scale of death was staggering. Gettysburg saw 3 days of fighting and over 50,000 casualties. It marked the high water mark of the Confederacy. After Gettysburg, the South would never again launch a major offensive in the North. In the West, Union forces captured New Orleans and took control of the Mississippi River. General Ulysses S. Grant laid siege to Vicksburg and starved the city into surrender. This cut the Confederacy in half. General William Tecumseh Sherman then began his march to the sea. He destroyed railroads, burned crops, and tore through Georgia. He practiced total war, aiming to break the South's ability and will to fight. Meanwhile, President Lincoln issued the Emancipation Proclamation. It declared that all enslaved people in Confederate states were free. It did not immediately end slavery, but it changed the purpose of the war. Now the Union fought not only for survival, but for freedom. Black men rushed to enlist. Over 180,000 served in the Union Army. They fought with courage. They faced death not only from bullets, but from execution or re-enslavement if captured. Yet they fought. For their people, for dignity, for the future. The Confederacy hoped for help from Europe. They believed cotton would bring them allies. But after the Emancipation Proclamation, Britain and France stepped back. They would not support a war for slavery. The war continued to drag on. The South's resources dried up. Its men were exhausted. Grant pushed forward with relentless pressure. He understood that victory would come not just through strategy, but through attrition. In 1865, Union forces captured Richmond, the Confederate capital. Robert E. Lee tried to escape west, but his army was surrounded. On April 9, 1865, at Appomattox Courthouse, he surrendered to Grant. Just 5 days later, Abraham Lincoln was assassinated, shot in the back of the head at Ford's Theater. He did not live to see the peace he had fought for. The South lay in ruins. Cities were burned. Fields left fallow. Millions of people were dead, wounded, orphaned, or traumatized. Slavery was abolished by the 13th Amendment. But freedom did not bring equality. Racism remained deeply rooted. Reconstruction began, but it was slow, violent, and fiercely resisted. 1 in every 4 Southern white men of military age had died. Entire communities were wiped out. Tens of thousands of men returned home with missing limbs. Many were never whole again, in body or mind. And the country remained deeply divided. The American Civil War ended on paper, but its consequences are still unfolding. This war forced America to reckon with its original sin. It tore off the mask. It exposed every contradiction. And it demanded that the country choose what it truly believed in. The cost was staggering. But the future was bought with that price. Not all battles are fought with guns, and not all wounds are visible. This was the war that forged modern America, and the memory of it must never fade. Please like, share, and subscribe if you believe in telling the truth behind history. This is the American Civil War, and this is the story that must be remembered. In the beginning, there were no borders, no passports, no races, no languages, just people. Homo sapiens. One species, one ancient family. born not in a country, but in the cradle of East Africa, 200,000 years ago. They walked upright. They hunted. They loved. They feared the dark. They looked to the stars, even if they did not have words for them. But the earth is vast, and humans wander. They migrated north. They chased game. They chased seasons. They crossed deserts. They climbed mountains. They built boats and found new islands. Every place changed them. Not in spirit, but in body. In the bright sun of the equator, dark skin protected them, a shield against ultraviolet rays. In the cold grey skies of the north, paler skin evolved to soak in every drop of sunlight. Noses narrowed to warm the air, hair coiled to cool the scalp. Bones shifted. Eyes adapted. Generations passed, and nature sculpted us. But race is not ancient. It is not scientific. It is not written in stone. Race is a story told by empires, by colonizers, by people who wanted to divide, because biologically, humans are almost the same. More similar than wolves. More similar than apes. There is only one human race. We just wear different skin. But something else was changing too. Something powerful and invisible. Language. At first it was sound. A grunt. A cry. A warning. Then rhythm. Then meaning. Then explosion. Clicks. Tones. Songs. Words. Language bloomed. It spread. It multiplied. It became over 7,000 forms of saying, I am here. I am alive. How did that happen? As we spread out, we changed how we spoke. We gave names to rivers. We told stories about stars. We described pain. We made poetry. Small groups created dialects. Dialects became languages. Languages became cultures. Words became legacy. But like race, language is not fixed. It moves. It evolves. It dies. It is born again. English is a good example. It is Germanic. It is Latin. It is French. It is Norse. It is messy. And it is everywhere. Language built everything. Laws. Books. Memories. Songs. Myths. Promises. But if language is how we speak, and race is how we look, then humanity is how we feel. Joy. pain, hope, grief. These do not need translation. From Ethiopia to Iceland, from Mongolia to Brazil, from deserts to ice, from temples to cities, we all cry the same. We laugh the same. We bury our dead the same. We are not strangers. We are reflections. So if you ask, why do we look so different? Why do we speak in so many ways? The answer is simple. We adapted. We survived. We changed. But we never stopped being one. We are the children of Earth, written in 7,000 languages, painted in every color, lived by 8 billion souls, still one. Hit like if you enjoyed this, sub to see more, share to support the channel. Throughout history, war has taken many forms. But perhaps no kind of battle tests the human spirit more than a siege. Trapped within walls, cut off from food, hope, and reinforcements. A siege is not just a battle of weapons, it is a battle of patience, fear, and survival. These are the greatest sieges in history. The siege of Troy, the Greeks versus the Trojans. It began with the abduction of Helen, and it lasted 10 years. The Greeks laid siege to Troy in a campaign filled with duels, deception, and death. Legends say it ended with the famous Trojan horse, a gift left at the city gates, hiding Greek soldiers within. When night fell, Troy was betrayed from the inside and burned to the ground. The siege of Babylon, the Persians versus the Babylonians. Cyrus the Great of Persia faced one of the most fortified cities in the world. Babylon's walls were tall, wide, and guarded by the Euphrates River. But Cyrus diverted the river and marched his army through the dry bed at night. The city fell without a fight. It was one of the most brilliant siege tactics in ancient history. The siege of Syracuse, the Greeks and Carthage combined versus the Roman Republic. During the Second Punic War, the Roman Republic attacked the Greek city of Syracuse. But the defenders had a secret weapon, Archimedes. The great inventor created catapults, mirrors, and defensive machines to hold off the Romans for nearly 2 years. Eventually, the city fell, and Archimedes was killed by a Roman soldier, despite orders to keep him alive. The Siege of Masada, Zealots versus the Roman Empire. In the deserts of Judea, a group of Jewish rebels held out against the Roman Empire atop a desert plateau. The Romans built a massive ramp over months to breach the fortress. But when they arrived, they found silence. Nearly 1,000 defenders had taken their own lives rather than be captured. It remains one of the most haunting sieges in history. The Siege of Constantinople, the Byzantine Empire versus Persians. The capital of the Byzantine Empire was tested more than once. In 717 it held firm against Arab forces. But in 1453 it faced the full force of the Ottoman Empire. Sultan Mehmed II brought cannons, including the massive bombard that shattered the Theodosian walls. After 53 days, Constantinople fell. The city became Istanbul, and the medieval era came to an end. The Siege of Tenochtitlan, the Aztecs versus the Spanish conquistadors. In the heart of modern-day Mexico, Hernán Cortés led Spanish forces against the Aztec capital. With the help of native allies and aided by disease, the Spanish laid siege to the island city. The canals turned red. Famine and smallpox ravaged the defenders. After 93 days, the Aztec Empire collapsed. The Siege of Vienna, Austrians versus the Ottoman Empire. The Ottoman Empire reached the gates of Europe's core. Vienna was surrounded. But a massive relief force led by Polish King Jan Sobieski launched the largest cavalry charge in history. The siege was broken. It marked the high water mark of Ottoman expansion into Europe. The Siege of Leningrad, Nazi Germany versus the Russians. Nazi Germany surrounded the Soviet city of Leningrad for nearly 900 days. In the freezing cold, over 1 million civilians died from starvation, shelling, and disease. Yet the city never surrendered. It was one of the longest and most tragic sieges in modern warfare. The Siege of Stalingrad, Nazi Germany versus Russians. Stalingrad wasn't a siege by walls, but by sheer destruction. Germany's Sixth Army pushed deep into the Soviet Union. But Soviet forces refused to break. Urban warfare took over, room by room, floor by floor. Eventually, Germany's army was surrounded and forced to surrender. It was the turning point of World War II. The Siege of Dien Bien Phu, Vietnamese versus the French. In the jungles of Vietnam, French forces set up a base at Dien Bien Phu. They believed they were safe, but the Viet Minh surrounded them in the hills and brought in heavy artillery. After 57 days, the French surrendered. It marked the end of French colonial rule in Indochina and the rise of the Vietnam War. The Siege of Sarajevo, Bosnia Civil War. In the Bosnian War, the capital city of Sarajevo was trapped for almost 4 years. Snipers targeted civilians. Artillery rained down on homes, schools, and hospitals. More than 10,000 people died, many of them children. It was the longest siege of a capital city in modern warfare. Sieges are not always won by force. Sometimes they are won by will. By the refusal to surrender. By hope that holds out even when the walls begin to crumble. From ancient stone cities to modern skylines, sieges have shaped the course of human history. Hit that like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe to see future content. Sharing is caring. Once upon a time in old Europe, people started dying mysteriously and in large numbers. And the explanation, according to many,
In the final days of World War II,
the Wild West wasn't built with rules. It was carved out of chaos, grit, and the promise of something better, even if it killed you. It began with a gun in one hand and a dream in the other. Millions moved west, chasing gold, land, or freedom. What they found was a land untamed, where the law came second to survival, and every sunrise might be your last. Outlaws roamed like wolves, armed, hunted, and unafraid. Jesse James wasn't born evil. He was made by war. As a teenager, he fought in brutal guerrilla units during the Civil War. Afterward, he led a gang that robbed banks, trains, and anything else that moved. But Jesse didn't run. He wrote letters to newspapers justifying every heist. The people didn't see a criminal. They saw a modern Robin Hood. He was betrayed by his own gang, shot in the back of the head while adjusting a picture on the wall, by a man who wanted the reward money more than his loyalty. Billy the Kid was lightning in a human body. He danced between jail cells and gunfights, charming some and terrifying others. He spoke fluent Spanish, sang to children, and smiled before drawing on grown men. He once broke out of a 2-story courthouse by killing both his guards and riding off on a stolen horse. His luck ran out in the dark. Sheriff Pat Garrett waited in the shadows and put a bullet through him before he even knew what hit him. He was 21, one kill for every year he lived. But legends weren't just born with bullets. Bass Reeves was a name history nearly buried. Born into slavery, he escaped, lived among native tribes, and taught himself to track like a ghost. He became the first black U.S. Marshal west of the Mississippi. He couldn't read, but he memorized over 3,000 warrants, and he brought them in alive or dead. They say he once arrested his own son for murder. Because out here, justice didn't care about blood. The women of the West were harder than the land they walked. Calamity Jane rode through fire and madness, drank with generals, and fought off Indian attacks with a rifle in one hand and a cigarette in the other. She never married Wild Bill Hickok, but she never stopped loving him. She asked to be buried beside him. She was. Stagecoach Mary broke noses and rules. She delivered mail through blizzards and bandit country. She drank whiskey, chewed cigars, and carried a shotgun under her skirts. When one man called her slow, she knocked out his teeth. The town cheered. Even Belle Starr, the bandit queen, rode with Jesse James and ruled a gang of her own. She wore velvet gowns to court and pistols to dinner. She was murdered on a dirt road, and to this day no one knows who pulled the trigger. And then there was love. The Wild West was brutal, but love still bloomed in saloons, train cars, and tents on the edge of nowhere. Gunfighters wrote poetry. Cowboys whispered dreams under starlit skies. One outlaw, Harry Alonzo Longabore, better known as the Sundance Kid, fell so deeply in love with a schoolteacher, he took her across the world to escape the law. They fled to South America. They died in a shootout in Bolivia. Together. Love didn't soften the West. It made the pain worth surviving. Towns like Deadwood, Tombstone, and Dodge City weren't just backdrops. They were pressure cookers. Lawmen like Wyatt Earp, Bat Masterson, and Wild Bill Hickok walked the tightrope between order and anarchy. The OK Corral shootout lasted just 30 seconds, but it turned into legend. 3 men killed, dozens of lives changed. That's the West. Blink, and your whole world changes. The California Gold Rush brought 300,000 people stampeding westward in search of fortune. Most left with nothing. Some died with gold in their pockets and a knife in their back. And yet, people kept coming. The Transcontinental Railroad stitched the continent together like a wound being sewn shut. But it was built on the backs of immigrants, Chinese workers, Irish laborers, freed slaves. Whole mountains were blasted apart. Towns appeared overnight. Where the train went, civilization followed. And with it, the end of the true Wild West. By 1890, the US Census declared the frontier closed. But the truth is, it never died. The West didn't vanish. It evolved. The grit, the rebellion, the romance, it still runs in American blood. In every underdog, every fighter, every wild heart that refuses to be tamed. The Wild West isn't gone. It's just waiting for the right kind of soul to ride again. If this stirred something in you, like the spirit of the frontier calling across time, smash that like button. Subscribe for more true legends, forgotten heroes, and raw, untamed history that Hollywood could never tell you. They don't teach this in school. They won't mention her in pirate movies. But the greatest pirate to ever live wasn't a man. Her name was Qing Shi. And she ruled the South China Sea with more power than most kings. Born in 1775 in Canton, she started life in a brothel. By the age of 32, she controlled the most feared pirate fleet in history. Her rise began when she married Zheng Yi, a feared pirate captain commanding the Red Flag Fleet. They ruled together for 6 years, conquering rival clans and expanding their influence. But when he died during a storm in 1807, chaos threatened to consume the empire they built. That's when Qing Shi took command. She didn't inherit the fleet, she secured it. By forging alliances, bribing key lieutenants, and marrying Zheng Yi's adopted son, she ensured full control. This wasn't luck. It was power politics, pirate style. She restructured the entire pirate confederation. 6 fleets, red, black, white, blue, yellow, and green, all answered to her. Each had its own admiral, but she commanded them all. She introduced one of the most brutal and effective pirate codes ever written. It enforced order where chaos once ruled. Under her, piracy became an organized business, efficient, ruthless, and terrifying. Her fleet grew to over 800 warships and 80,000 pirates. They attacked imperial convoys, seized merchant vessels, and collected protection money from entire coastal villages. She demanded tribute from major ports. If they refused, she destroyed their ships, burned their docks, and left no survivors. She defeated the Chinese Navy in open water, not once but several times. One legendary clash at the Pearl River Delta saw her fleet smash through a blockade of imperial warships, stealing their cannons and setting fire to their sails. The Qing government begged help from Portugal and Britain. Gunboats arrived. They failed. Qing Shi's tactics were unmatched. She used shallow draft ships to escape into coves where larger vessels couldn't follow. She faked retreats, then ambushed pursuing enemies. And she was a master of timing, striking during storms when defenders were weak. Her pirates once raided a salt monopoly warehouse, seizing the entire seasonal supply, then reselling it back to the government at a profit. She didn't just rob. She controlled markets. No one was safe. Fishermen, merchants, nobles, even tax collectors were forced to pay her tribute. She also expanded inland, controlling smuggling routes and punishing towns that resisted. Entire villages relocated to avoid her wrath. But her most surprising move wasn't violence. It was diplomacy. By 1810, the Qing dynasty was desperate. They offered her a full pardon, but she negotiated better. She walked into the Governor-General's palace with her top lieutenants, unarmed. She demanded amnesty for her fleet, retention of their wealth, and official military jobs for her officers. She got it all. No execution. No prison. No betrayal. Just total victory. She retired with her fortune, opened a gambling house, and became a respected businesswoman. She raised a family. She lived until the age of 69, something nearly unheard of for pirates. She died peacefully. And history buried her under silence. But the facts remain. She commanded the largest pirate fleet ever recorded.